Let's do it, Leah. We're reminiscing.
Hurry now, don't be late. So yeah, it's our 50th episode, and
We're not dancing in the dark and we're not walking in the park, but we are reminiscing.
Right. I'm sitting in a closet, and you're sitting in an apartment.
Yeah.
Reminiscing.
Because all right, I'm going to bring up some data points. Here you come. I gotta see our data points here.
Tina has a cold.
I do have a cold, so if I sound a little off,
If she's sniffly,
if my otherwise super smooth radio voice sounds rough,
your dulcet NPR voice.
yes. All right, so we created 1,281 minutes of new content, and that's more than 95% of other creators in the health and fitness category. Woo, woo,
Woo! Insert sound of people going woo.
Insert applause. That's right.
So, in case you're wondering what we're doing here, we are the Cancer Pod, and we're celebrating our 50th episode by reminiscing about from day one when this was a baby podcast. Because I guess we're not considered a baby anymore. Are we a teenage podcast? Are we a tween?
I would call us a tween because I think this is our awkward stage where we have a growth spurt.
Totally. We're a tween podcast, not a podcast for tweens.
Correct. But we do, sometimes we feel like we're the only ones with our struggles. Sometimes we feel a little awkward. Sometimes we even get a little insecure. We'll admit it right here, right now. But ultimately, we know our potential is good.
That's right.
And
when we grow up,
we're good.
When we grow up, we're going to be somebody.
That's right.
People are going to listen to us.
Interestingly, in the last couple of years, especially since COVID, a lot of people started podcasts and then dropped them. So we actually do have more episodes in a longer history than, I don't know, well over 50%, maybe 70% of podcasts that had started in the last couple of years. So there is stick-to-itiveness. Stick-to-itness? Is that am I saying that right?
Stick-to-itiveness?
Just stick to it.
Just do it. Oh, am I allowed to say that? Am I allowed to say someone else's?
Well, I think Nike will only come after you if you make billions of dollars, but I think we're safe.
Oh, good.
So just so you know, our podcast has reached 33 different countries via Spotify.
Nice.
Yeah. So most of our listeners that are foreign in other countries, and this is Belgium and France and Germany and Australia and all around the world.
Bhutan.
There is always Bhutan. There's some spots in Western Africa and Eastern Africa. And sorry, I didn't name the countries because that's, this is a pet peeve of mine when people just say Africa. So there are people listening in Ghana and there are people listening in Ethiopia.
Awesome.
And South Africa. I should mention that too. So anyways, this is exciting. So we are getting out there. We're reaching more people than we possibly could if we were doing this live in auditoriums. We'll work our way to Madison Square Garden, right? I mean, that's the only way you could reach more people than you could on a podcast is go to like gigantic venues and be Taylor Swift or something.
Madison Square Garden. Taylor Swift, opening act, the Cancer Pod. Get on that, Tay-Tay.
Wait a second. I thought you said our audience isn't tweens.
I thought you like Taylor Swift.
I do.
Anyways, we're getting off the subject. We're gonna, so bringing it back around. 50 episodes on a whole bunch of different subjects, but the commonality is cancer. We're not trying to normalize cancer, but we're just trying to make a conversation. Is there anything wrong with normalizing cancer? I mean,
well, it depends who you ask. I think when it becomes normal in your life, there's nothing wrong with it. But people who are distant from it, who haven't had to experience it firsthand, either as a caregiver or themselves, it is called the big C for a reason. I think it's out there lurking when people don't like to look at it head on. So I do think that there is a little bit of that hesitance. I'm putting it in our title as a little bold of us because that means that we know that some folks are not going to hit the play button because of that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess cancer is so normal in my life just because of, what we do for a living and then also through my last however many years life experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the past 8 years, it really became more of a normal, unfortunately. So, but yeah, it still is scary to a lot of people, and it's scary to people, obviously, for the right reasons. But I don't know, looking on social media, a lot of people talk about losing family and friends, not to cancer, but because maybe they had a cancer diagnosis and the people drift out of their lives.
Yeah.
So it's just, just being able to have conversations, I think is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So that non-cancer people, if they listen to our podcast, maybe they can help to identify more with their friends and family members who are going through it.
Well, and I think that because people turn away, there is a certain level of denial in our culture because in the United States anyways, 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetimes. So, there's a pretty good odds that it's going to touch every single person's life at some point. If it's not themselves, it's their loved one.
Right. Yeah.
So it is a certain denial to think that it's not going to touch you in your lifetime. So, but that's not, I mean, that's kind of a bummer. That's no way to talk.
Not on our anniversary party, our episode party, whatever this is.
I know we should have gotten dressed up and like made it the real deal.
I know. I thought about that, and then I got cold, so I put on a sweater.
Yeah. Would the clacking of ice cubes in my mocktail or cocktail be distracting? Maybe.
Possibly.
Instead, I sit here with a head cold and a hot cup of tea.
I know. I'm like, instead we'll slurp our tea. But, we party in our own ways. So something I did, which I think you saw on Instagram stories, was I put out the question, like, is there some burning question that you have after listening to one of our episodes? And we got a few responses. I just have to say in general, like from the beginning, we were doing Instagram lives kind of to try to answer questions that people might have from the episodes. And it didn't seem to matter what we were talking about. I mean, we did start off talking about hot flashes. And so this kind of trigger similar type questions. But a lot of people have questions about aromatase inhibitors and tamoxifen and the side effects. And so I'm just saying this because we have talked about doing a separate episode for that. And so we really got to get on it.
All right, 2023.
That's right. That's our New Year's resolution. We're going to talk about it.
Yes. And I think I mentioned to you, and maybe I even mentioned it on the podcast, that when we talk about these things, visuals will be important. So maybe we migrate some of this over to YouTube so we can have a real lesson with some visuals that would be helpful for the audio.
Yeah, no, that would be great. That would be great.
All right. I'll put it on the to-do list.
Yeah, our honey-do list.
Oh, yeah.
So, and the reason I said that is because there are three of the questions that are breast cancer and like aromatase, tamoxifen related. But we're not only a breast cancer podcast. A lot of people that listen to us are breast cancer patients, survivors, and
Yes.
And I'm one of them.
Did you say you want more stats? 1 in 8 women will have breast cancer in their lifetime in the United States anyway.
Did I say? I don't remember saying that, but that is a stat. Yeah. And so I am one of those 8 women. And so it is something that is close to me and taken off of me. But anyways, okay, I digress. Let's answer the questions from Instagram and then we'll kind of go through and talk about memories of the past 49 episodes.
I'm a little dull, so I'm going to let you lead and I'll just chime in, probably with statistics. I'm kidding.
I like that. I like how you're like, I'm not feeling so well. I'm a little dull. So I'll just bring up all the numbers.
It's easier.
It's easier for me than the words. Okay. So let's start off. Let's just take a quick break and then we'll come back with our questions from Instagram.
All right.
I'm Dr. Tina Kaiser, and as Leah likes to say, I'm the sciencey one.
And I'm Dr. Leah Sherman, and I'm the Cancer Insider.
And we're 2 naturopathic doctors who practice integrative cancer care.
But we're not your doctors.
This is for education, entertainment, and informational purposes only.
Do not apply any of this information without first speaking to your doctor.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast by the hosts and their guests are solely their own.
Welcome to the Cancer Pod. Okay, we're back, and we're reading questions from Instagram that I solicited in anticipation of this episode. So the first question is weight loss and tamoxifen. Why am I so chubby and unmotivated? So if I recall, there was not any correlation between weight gain and tamoxifen in studies, but everyone, including myself, most everyone, I'm not going to generalize because I have met people who've lost weight on tamoxifen, like unintentionally, but so many women talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
They gain weight when they're put on tamoxifen. So what's that about?
Let me ask you this. Is it a sense of weight gain? Because I think of us as sensing weight distribution changes. Our pants might get tighter or whatever, where our weight shifts. I mean, does the scale actually change, or does the change to the body, which might entail loss of muscle in addition to fat deposition happening in areas that didn't happen before? Maybe that's what kind of triggers it. So the scale doesn't look as dramatic as one feels. Could that be possible?
It could be, but for me, I was one weight at the end of my chemo. I did not lose weight during chemo. And then when I started on tamoxifen, I think I gained at least 20 pounds.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah. it was pretty significant. And I used to blame my implants, but they're not that heavy. But it was a good thing to blame. So yeah, clothes didn't fit because I did have implants, which didn't quite fit into my prior wardrobe. But yeah, I am only, I think honestly, like since I started doing Prolon, and it took a long time because with Prolon, like I would lose 5 pounds and then, gain it back, and then you lose 5 pounds and you gain it back. But then I think over time of doing it, like a couple years, I did start to go down in weight. And I don't know if I have more muscle mass. I don't know. Anyways, but yes, I thought that we had talked about this in a live once. And for some reason, we're not talking about the chemo brain, but it hits me every once in a while. Wasn't there a correlation between women who did chemo and then took tamoxifen and weight gain?
That would not be surprising. I don't remember the episode or the IG live that we did, but I think the steroid that's often given alongside the chemotherapy is known to lead to weight gain for a lot of people going through that particular treatment. Anyone going through chemo who's getting a steroid, dexamethasone is usually given alongside certain chemotherapy drugs. A lot of people gain weight because of it. And I don't know if it's that combined with lowering estrogen afterwards or the effects of tamoxifen on the gut biome. Because I think some of this has to do with what's going on in the gut and what the biome is doing, the bacteria in the gut. Because we know that certain gut bacteria lead to a leaner body and certain gut bacteria lead to the preservation of calories is our way of saying it. So meaning, if you put 100 calories in your mouth, 90 of them go into your bloodstream with certain bacteria. And if you have a different set of bacteria in your gut, maybe when you put 100 in your mouth, only 70 go into your bloodstream. So this gut biome might be the link between whether this happens or not. And I'm going to guess because you're taking tamoxifen every day, tamoxifen is also affecting the gut biome. There's no doubt.
Right. And I mean, as I've mentioned before in the Leah episodes, I was also given goserelin, which put me into menopause. So I'm not like your typical tamoxifen patient where I was given tamoxifen because you have to be in menopause for like 2 years after completing chemotherapy, I think, before they define you as being postmenopausal. And then they were going to switch me over, and then I said no. So I said, no, I'm good with the tamoxifen. Let's keep it for a while. Yeah. So the unmotivated part, I don't remember who asked this question, and I don't know what else is going on in their world, but I know depression is a really big thing that, as we all know, not only happens to people while they're in treatment, but even when you come out on the other end, if you come out on the other end, there's a lot of depression. If you don't, there's a lot of depression. It doesn't have to be like what we stereotypically think, but just even lack of motivation can be a sign of depression.
Well, and it's interesting because I think this effect is going to be more dramatic in people who are premenopausal over postmenopausal women. So perimenopausal, you can flip a coin. I'm not sure which direction it's going to go for those people. But I say this because tamoxifen in particular is thought to be slightly estrogenic on the brain, not as estrogenic as your own estrogens are. So if you're premenopausal and you've got normal levels and you have a cycle, you have a period every month, you have a certain surge of estrogens every month that bathe your brain basically. And in doing so, encourage the brain to make neurotransmitters like serotonin. So serotonin goes into these little vesicles, imagine them like little bubbles full of serotonin, and then they get released when appropriate throughout the month. And so when you don't have estrogen circulating, you just don't have as much serotonin in the vesicles. And tamoxifen is thought to be slightly estrogenic in the brain. Now, slightly estrogenic is by no means as estrogenic as your normal estrogen is. So maybe you have less serotonin in the vesicles if you're premenopausal. Now, if you're postmenopausal, you're kind of already used to that state. Your estrogen isn't surging. You're not making the many packets packed full of serotonin. So you're already kind of used to a lower serotonin state on a day-to-day basis. So the tamoxifen shouldn't have as much effect on postmenopausal women when it comes to neurotransmitters as it does premenopausally.
Interesting.
It's that whole thing where we talk about tamoxifen being relative to what you started with, right? So premenopausally, when you go on tamoxifen, you're going to feel a dramatic shift downward in all estrogen activity. So you'll have more bone loss than you would normally have. You might have tougher time with memory and cognition issues because it's less estrogen than normal. Postmenopausally, tamoxifen actually is slightly estrogenic on bone compared to nothing. Because postmenopausal, you have very, very low levels of estrogen. Tamoxifen comes along, and it's actually slightly more estrogenic than having nearly no estrogen or having super low levels of circulating estrogen. So it's relative to what was going on in your body before the diagnosis and before tamoxifen entered the picture.
Yeah. So when I got my goserelin injection, I think that's what resulted in osteopenia. But as I've been taking tamoxifen all these years, my DEXA is slightly improving, and my oncologist attributes that to the tamoxifen being protective to the bone.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, because I think this is very confusing, because we're talking about premenopausal versus postmenopausal, and then tamoxifen having a slightly estrogenic action in the bone and the brain postmenopausally relative to no estrogen, but always on breast tissue. Breast cancer and normal breast tissue, tamoxifen is considered anti-estrogenic.
Right.
Across the board, all the time. So just so we're clear, it does have an anti-estrogen action when it comes to breast cells.
Right. And that's also why you have to watch out for things like vaginal spotting and bleeding, because it is also estrogenic to the uterus.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back to the unmotivated. Do you think that it is a level of depression, mood that like estrogen was protective of, or even the fatigue?
Yeah. I think that physical fatigue and mental fatigue are very similar. And I think that, estrogen helps us focus and helps us think, and it does elevate mood. So I can see how this is directly linked to changes in hormonal status. Sure.
And so I know what my answer would be to if a patient came to me with this question, and it would be get moving, exercise, and not because of the chubby, but because of, and I know it's hard to exercise if you're unmotivated, but find something that you love to do that involves movement.
I think that's excellent advice. Some people are naturally disciplined and they'll get up and they'll do what they need to do, even if they don't feel like doing it. And I think finding something that you actually enjoy brings a level of commitment to those who have a hard time finding that discipline. And it also is, let's face it, joy is like the anti-stress factor. So if you like to dance, or you like to kayak, or you like to hike in the woods, whatever you like to do, institute that. And it's exercise, it's movement, it's anti-depression, anti-anxiety, helps you sleep. Yeah, can't go wrong with it.
Yeah, and there are so many apps, and there are even Instagram accounts where you could follow them. And then if there is an exercise that you like, you want to try later, you could just save it. I mean, people know how to use Instagram, but it's just a reminder that, you can use it as more than just something being social. Or if you see something, just do it right then and there if you can. If it's an easy to do exercise, just break out in the line while you're waiting at the bank and, do some heel raises or whatever. Seriously.
I'm picturing people doing squats out there. They're like waiting in the bank doing squats.
Heck yeah. Why not? Get people moving. Yell out squat challenge and everyone starts squatting. So yeah, I mean, I hope that helps. But yeah, movement is really the number one thing that I've been recommending for patients across the board. And so yeah, hopefully there's something that the person asking the question, enjoys doing. And I know like it's hard to get motivated to do it in the first place, but I don't know, put an alert in your phone.
Or meet somebody. Sometimes it's easier to commit to somebody else than yourself. So find a buddy.
Accountability. Yeah. Or, maybe there's an opportunity to get a trainer at a gym, join a gym for a short period of time, get the trainer, and then complimentary trainer, and then get rid of them. I don't know. If you have ideas, let us know what motivates you to exercise. But no, I mean, I get it.
Yeah, it is tough. And it's common. I mean, I know that the studies might say one thing, but I have commonly heard from patients weight gain is an issue and just sluggishness in general, including mental sluggishness.
I mean, it's the same thing where, we hear from our oncologists like tamoxifen doesn't cause joint pain. And all of us who have taken tamoxifen at one point or other will be like, I beg to differ. So, and I've seen papers that say it does. So yes. This kind of segues into our next question about why isn't there more talk about postmenopausal breast cancer? And the person continues, it seems like triple negative and young people have so much more conversation than hormone and HER2 positive postmenopausal breast cancer. It would be great to hear from these ladies, I think she means us, and how, for example, an aromatase inhibitor affects their life. Oh, I see. Oh, from the postmenopausal ladies. Okay. Is it different than premenopausal ladies? Okay. So giving a voice to postmenopausal women with ERPR and plus or minus HER2 positive breast cancer. I think in the social media world, it definitely is dominated by the younger people with breast cancer for sure, because it's the platform, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I would assume that's the case because when it comes to social media, especially TikTok, Instagram, kind of when you get away from Facebook, people under a certain age are more likely to be there.
Yeah. And I have seen older women, postmenopausal women, I seek them out to, see what's going on in their world. But I can tell you that the majority of my patients they're not young.
Yeah.
I mean, I see patients who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. So
I think if this person's question refers to just headlines in general about triple negative and HER2 positivity, in the past year in particular, we've had some breakthrough treatments for those two subsets of people with breast cancer. So there are new treatments available. HER2 positivity is something that needs to be revisited by everyone who thinks that their tumor was HER2 negative and now has a recurrence of cancer needs to reassess their HER2 status because there are now treatments for what is called HER2 low status.
Right.
And HER2 low didn't exist before. So I think that's one headline that's been, kind of coming through a lot because of a new drug out in the last year. And the other is triple negative because we have immunotherapies now. Some people with triple negative disease are having really good response to these immune therapies. And that's all newly approved in the last couple of years as well. So I think as far as general headlines go, some of the breakthrough drugs for these two subsets of people with breast cancer might be one of the reasons that we are hearing so much about it in headlines lately.
And yeah, like I, was started off by saying oh guys, I sound like such an old person. The younger generation is much more social media savvy. And if that's where you are getting a lot of your information, that's the voice you're going to be hearing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those patients are out there. It's just, they may not be as vocal.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the risk of breast cancer goes up with every decade of life because aging itself is a risk factor for breast cancer.
Right.
So there's certainly more people over the age of 50 with breast cancer today than there are under the age of 50.
And what I think is really interesting, and I pointed it out when I went to see my oncologist down in Arizona, that like most of my patients are elderly. I mean, I've had patients in their 90s. And when I worked at the other cancer center in Arizona, my patient population was much younger. So I think it's just kind of like where you are. And, in terms of like, if you are looking, it's funny because a lot of the young people on social media will comment about being in the infusion room and everybody's older than they are,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but really good question. Really good question. We have another breast cancer related question. Somebody asked, is 550 milligrams of turmeric daily contraindicated with an aromatase inhibitor? I don't know if we're going to get into specific dosages, but let's just make it generic. Is turmeric contraindicated with an aromatase inhibitor?
Not in my book. You?
I don't think so. I mean, turmeric as food, like I'm all for. Like I think, put turmeric in your food. The turmeric is, like me thinking offhand, it's contraindicated with tamoxifen because of, as we've discussed, how tamoxifen is converted into its like active form. But I don't think of it with the aromatase inhibitor.
No.
But, as we say, talk to your doctor.
This is not medical advice. We are not your doctors.
That's right. I've heard that before.
I think that's what you say. You say something like that all the time.
I think I do. So last question that we got from Instagram is collagen powder. Is that okay with someone with CLL? I take it for my joint pain. So that is, we don't talk a lot about heme cancers, but
CLL is chronic lymphocytic leukemia.
Yeah. So it's a hematological cancer. And
can I say that CLL is a really interesting entity?
Tell me.
I'll tell you why. Because I am intrigued by CLL. It's not like other leukemias where you churn out these, cells faster. It's actually just that your white cells don't want to die. They just don't go away. They don't get cleared out by your spleen. They just kind of accumulate and they get a higher and higher number. So it's different. It's not a highly proliferative disease. There is no crisis state. It's not like CML where you can go into a crisis and that's very serious. CLL is kind of like a train. It's slow, it's steady, and it's really hard to stop once it starts, right? So, but it kind of keeps going and going. These white cells just don't know when to quit. So it's kind of an interesting entity in the grand scheme of leukemias. Anyways.
Yeah, so it's very slow.
Most of the time.
Yes. So collagen powder. We talked in our episode, one of our Supplements 101 episodes about collagen.
Mm-hmm.
How is it protective to healthy cells or is it protective to cancer cells? And so when it comes to CLL, and when we talk about collagen, it's typically people taking a collagen powder. I'm going to just kind of generalize. And those have higher dosages. Like a scoop is like, 10 grams or whatever it is. They're higher dosages than most people would take. So You did the whole separate podcast on collagen.
Yeah. They break apart the collagen into little tiny pieces. So collagen is a protein. And in our bodies, collagen is the most common protein because it's a structural protein. It's what holds us together, gives integrity to all of our tissues. And anyways, when we do collagen from whatever animal, they do it from beef, they do it from pork, they do it from fish. They pull the collagen out and then they break it up and they call it hydrolyzed. They'll end up with some smaller molecules that are only 2 or 3 amino acids. So these little dipeptides and tripeptides, which is just a fancy name for 2 amino acids linked together or 3 amino acids linked together. And they have biological actions. And that's the cautionary with collagen is what are the biological actions of these dipeptides and tripeptides? They haven't all been defined. We're still discovering new things that these dipeptides and tripeptides do because they're not just structural. They're not just integrated into a new protein. They actually stimulate other cells. So in the case of skin, the reason collagen is used for skincare is because these little dipeptides and tripeptides stimulate laying down of collagen in the skin, which is an anti-aging thing. So we will often see collagen or hydrolyzed collagen for skincare. And the same for joints. Because it stimulates the production of collagen, it can be used for joint health as well. With CLL, it's a hematological cancer, like you mentioned. It's not a tumor. I still would, out of an abundance of caution, be very careful about introducing anything new and watch those labs closely. So for example, if someone has CLL and generally folks with CLL will be getting regular labs, whether it's every 3 months, every 6 months, something. If you're going to introduce collagen or maybe you get a lot of relief from it, it would be the only thing to introduce. And then you watch your white blood cell count, you watch your lymphocyte count, and you see, did it affect it? And if you kind of bring it in and it goes up, take it out, see if it goes down, that kind of thing. I would be very, very careful. I'm super cautious though. I assume whenever something is unknown that it could be contraindicated until proven otherwise. So that's my kind of cautionary tale because I think that we take for granted that natural things will always be safe sometimes. And if they're having a biological action, there's nothing to say that the cancer can't derive some benefit that's yet to be defined. We don't know.
Right, because cancer is sneaky and it'll change how it acts depending on the environment.
And never underestimate it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think these are really good questions. Do you want to take another break and then we could just come back and do some more reminiscing?
Shall we sing
Hurry,
it?
now, don't be late.
I can hardly wait.
Dun, 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 dun. I don't know. I had the lyrics up before. Anyways, okay, we'll be back.
And we're back. All right. So that was our CLL question. And what else do we want to?
Oh, nothing.
Oh, I thought
I'm
you were
listening
giving
to
me
you. No, I'm listening to you. I'm like, all like,
That's your listening
that's
face?
my like, what's going to happen next, Tina? Oh, oh my God.
That's funny.
Okay.
All right. So let's. All right. We're back. Okay. So let's talk about a few other things that came up in our reminiscing.
Yeah. So I guess for those who came in kind of in the middle of our episodes, maybe you weren't here from day one, but we started off talking about hot flashes. We just figured I actually went back and I listened to the episodes. I was like, why the heck did we ever start doing this? And I had said something funny to you. Apparently you thought it was funny. I didn't, about eating ice cream and having hot flashes.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of what like spurred the first episode, right? Or the first 3 episodes.
Ah, yes. I remember it well.
There you go. So I just have to say that, because the hot flashes are just so difficult to manage, and like people want supplements and they do black cohosh or they do like magnesium, like there are all these different things and there are different like algorithms in my mind as to why I'm going to start with somebody with a certain supplement. But I have to say, the number one thing that I find most effective to manage hot flashes is regulating that blood sugar.
All right.
Yeah. Now, I have patients kind of putting that together too. It's like I plant the seed and then maybe they alter their diet. They're not going to bed with their ice cream or their pie or whatever it may be. They might be doing a little protein snack to keep that blood sugar from dipping in the middle of the night, whatever it may be, increasing more fruits and vegetables and fiber, healthy proteins to slow that whole blood sugar metabolism, keep it even keel. Yeah, it really, really plays a big part in that.
I think blood sugar is a huge issue because your cortisol goes up, right? So if your blood sugar dips in that scenario, if you have low blood glucose at any point, your cortisol has to go up. And right behind your cortisol is your sympathetic nervous system. People who are prone to hot flashes already have a slightly higher sympathetic tone compared to the parasympathetics. And when you have a hot flash, it goes more extreme. Parasympathetics get depressed while sympathetics go into overdrive. So yeah, I could see how that would tip one over right over to a hot flash.
And that's also why stress can trigger hot flashes because of that as well.
So you want to do things like deep breathing, relaxation, kind of bring your sympathetic tone down as best you can. I mean, there is a bit of hardwiring here, I think. The tendency towards hot flashes as women go through menopause, you can ask your mother. That's your best guess is whether you're going to have hot flashes or not. If your mother had hot flashes, you're more likely to have hot flashes. This is like all cancer aside. This is just general.
Interesting. So from hot flashes, we moved on. We moved on to the questions that we get all the time. Is this good for me? Is this bad for me? Good for you, bad for you.
Episodes 4, 5, and 6.
That's right. We talked about coffee, soy, and alcohol. How could I forget?
The evil demon.
Oh, and this is when we introduced our unofficial theme song, because that was that song by the Kinks. That was our first unofficial theme song.
That's right. The evil demon alcohol.
Yeah.
So let's just say it. Coffee seems okay in moderation. If anything, it protects you from a lot of different cancers, particularly primary liver cancer and endometrial cancer. Soy is fine in moderation. Just make sure it's not sprayed with a bunch of glyphosate, aka Roundup.
And real soy food. It has to be real soy food. It can't be those powders and bars and all that other stuff.
Processed food is processed food, even if it has the word organic on it. Just processed food, be mindful of not eating that very often or very much. And yeah, soy isolates, soy supplements, maybe avoid those.
Right. For the good or for the bad. So,
and alcohol, we have to say that this is the worst news of all of our 49 episodes. Alcohol is just not good for you. I mean, it's just not.
It's not. No. And I just saw an article that was talking about how we just don't talk enough about how alcohol is not good for you in terms of cancer. So what did come out of I think it was this episode that kind of got me doing those recipes for mocktails.
I've seen mocktails out at bars now. There's a mocktail list next to the cocktail list.
Which is awesome. And I just made some cranberry shrub for, some festive mocktails. Maybe I'll come up with a nice recipe and post that because it's a great way of adding flavor to things. And no, there are wonderful alternatives.
What is a shrub? What is it?
So shrubs it's not quite a ferment, but it's kind of, you add sugar. I think you could also add, what's it called? Probably do monk fruit too. Or you could probably find some other like sweetener to do. You mix it with fruit. So I used sugar, organic vegan sugar and cranberries, and you kind of let them macerate, and then you strain it out, you squeeze out the berries, and the liquid is something that you just add to sparkling water. You could use it with some of those non-alcoholic like liquor substitutes. I have, I think, a recipe online for like a fake cosmopolitan and then like a mock old fashioned.
So you don't ferment it?
It's not really fermented. Like it sits in your fridge.
It doesn't have the flavor of vinegar or alcohol or anything like that.
Oh, but it does. No, it does. I'm sorry. I left out the big part of it is you add apple cider vinegar to it.
Oh.
Yeah. So you do have a little bit of a tang. And you don't use that much of it.
Another question.
Yes.
Is that apple cider vinegar have to have the mother in the bottle?
I don't think that really matters.
Okay. I'm wondering if you're creating a little bit of further fermentation with the sugar.
If you are, it's very slow because it's going to be in the fridge.
Okay.
You're not leaving it out.
Oh, you don't leave it on the counter?
No, you refrigerate it.
Okay.
Yeah, if you left it out, you're for sure creating some sort of hooch.
That was my first fermentation experiment, right?
Hooch?
Well, I grew up in upstate New York. My first experiment, I heard you could make alcohol from apple cider. So I was like 6 years old. So I thought taking the apple cider out of the refrigerator and throwing it under my bed was a good idea. So I did that and it made vinegar. So that was my first lesson. I was like, that didn't make alcohol. And why I want to make alcohol at 6 years old was probably because
that was my question.
Right. Probably because I was running the bar, making the grasshoppers and the Alexander brandies already. At Christmas time and stuff.
Brandy Alexanders.
Alexanders. See, that's how much I know about bars.
Well, you were making them. I don't think I've made one since I went to bartending school.
I'm sure somebody just dropped that little bit of knowledge down, and I just like glommed onto it. I can do what? I can make something from something. Let me try that.
Well, it is very confusing because apple cider, like cider can be like
hard cider,
and it could be festive autumn cider. So alcohol.
Okay, so I want to put a caveat to all of this. When we say processed food is really bad for you, it doesn't mean we never ever touch the stuff. I've had an Impossible Burger or Beyond Burger or something like that, with the full knowledge that that thing is processed to all get out. It's not real food in my book, but doesn't mean I'm never going to have it, right? Or an alcoholic drink. Certainly have my share of beer because that's my thing. So yeah, I just want to say that out there because sometimes we might sound like we're being absolutists, and even though something is bad for you, it means that you're an adult and you get to choose the risk benefit is yours for the choosing.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm the same. Anyone who knows me knows my weakness is a bag of potato chips.
I'll take that over a sweet treat any day.
And I like my sweet treats, but but I avoid them because of hot flashes. It all comes full circle, we're connected. And alcohol, I save it for special occasions. There are people getting together, like a work thing at a place where they have margaritas. Not really good food, in my opinion.
Can't believe you just slammed your nearby restaurant.
That's not like one of my favorite places to go. And then like they have like super sweet margaritas. Like if I'm going to like use my alcohol card for the week or the month, I'm going to like save it for a special occasion. That's kind of what I was saying. I had a drink on Saturday in honor of my mother. I went and had lunch at a department store in the big city.
In honor of your mother?
In honor of my mother, because that was her thing. And I had myself a little cocktail in the middle of the day.
Wow.
Yeah, but that was my thing. And then last night I made tacos with a friend and we split an NA beer. And there are some good NA beers out there.
NA is non-alcoholic for the uninitiated.
Who've never even thought there could be a non-alcoholic beer. But there are a lot of good ones out there and some craft ones. So yeah, and we need to do more good for you, bad for you things because I still get questions all the time about other stuff. So we'll come back to those episodes. And then we delved into the side effects.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that was the introduction of our duck.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay, so we introduce the duck quack whenever there's profanity used so that we can keep our clean rating on Apple and other directories.
That's right, because the Cancer Pod is rated G.
Yep.
So we don't get banned in certain countries because I am a potty mouth by nature. So I think the side effects episodes, I think they're pretty popular.
They're some of our most popular. Actually, is that the one where we did Chemo Brain?
No, that was survivorship. Yes, that was Chemo Brain. But they're kind of intertwined. I mean, side effects, survivorship effects, like it's all intertwined.
Okay.
Yeah, Chemo Brain was our most listened to, according to your statistics.
According to statistics, most listened to and most downloaded.
Wow.
And I think that there are a lot of similarities between Chemo Brain and post-COVID brain. And I think that has also led to more popularity because I think that's current. It's a current event, is this long haul COVID brain fog that's happening for folks. So,
oh, interesting. Yeah.
Anyways, if you haven't listened to it, you should go back. I think the Chemo Brain episode was very useful for folks to hear.
Or if you're like me and have Chemo Brain, go back and listen to it because you might not remember what we said.
There's that. Maybe that's why it's the most popular. Maybe it's been listened to more than once by the same folks. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, and I mean I'm joking, but I'm not because I should go back and listen to it. But I should go back and listen to it. I was having fun going back and listening. At first I thought I was going to be like, it would be cringy, but it was actually kind of fun.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I mean, the side effects, I mean, that's the whole goal of what we do is to try to reduce them and try to prevent them before they happen. So hopefully we had some good information in those episodes to help people as they are going through their treatments.
Yeah, as we're reminiscing, let's talk about that. So our big reason for doing a podcast was to have a platform that reached more people than we possibly could otherwise, and just give them straight advice from, I don't know how many decades of experience in cancer care we add up to. You ever see these folks online? They're like 100 years of experience. And you look at, there's like 10 people.
Combined.
Yes, we've had over 30 years experience combined. Whatever.
It's so cheesy.
I think that's it. I think it's because it's kind of, who cares? The reason we put the podcast together was to give away the information and get it out there to folks who can't find it anywhere. And what we do, we have heard over the years, why don't more people do this? Why don't more people integrate natural medicine to their conventional cancer care? Why don't we have answers to these questions? Why doesn't someone just talk to me directly? And there's a lot of reasons in our conventional model of cancer care that doesn't happen. I will say it's changing for the better all the time. So I just want to say that because I think our roots, I think it's important to realize like that we're doing this in the purest sense, just to get out there and get the word out and help people with direct conversation with tips and tricks and knowledge, because knowledge is power.
But it's not medical advice.
So don't confuse it with medical advice. Even though I say things as if I know, like I say things in a definitive way because I'm used to giving medical advice all the time, right? So this is what I do as a clinician. So sometimes it might even sound like I'm giving medical advice, but don't believe my tone. Believe Leah.
Great. And that leads us to our next pod, which was Talk to Your Doctor, episodes 11 through 13, where basically talk to your doctor if you're interested in integrative oncology. See if there are resources out there. Like we covered, I don't know, 3 episodes worth of things that people can chat up their doctors.
And how to do it, because I think one of the things that people are trying to do is have a conversation with their doctor so that their doctor hears them. And so finding common ground and kind of going side saddle that way into a conversation where you can have the medical oncologist, radiation oncologist, surgical oncologist, doesn't matter. Whoever your healthcare professional is, finding a way to find common ground. So maybe starting with those things that we call the pillars or the foundations of health. Talking about exercise. What do they think? And then you're going to find these things that you both agree on. Don't start with diet because you may not agree. I think a lot of the advice out there is still crap when it comes to diet. See someone who knows what they're talking about. It's not just about calories, because people still get advice to say, go just, whatever it takes, get those calories down.
Eat whatever you want.
That doesn't mean you get to go through a drive-through every single day and, eat fast food because they're calories. If they're empty calories, they're not doing you much good. They might be doing you more damage, actually. So maybe start with exercise and sleep and other things and work your way into conversations. And they probably won't know about supplements because that's not what they do, right? And so it's okay if your oncologist doesn't know about supplements. They shouldn't really. I don't know where they would find the time to learn in-depth information on supplements unless they were dedicated to the cause and already practicing integratively. There are a few out there that are doing that.
And I want to add about, your comment about diet, because I do, because I got my finger on the pulse of social media here. And so I do see people posting things about like, being chastised for eating, junk food or whatever while they're going through treatment. And again, as we said, it's not like we're opposed to people having it every once in a while. But if somebody is complaining about fatigue and all they're eating is processed empty calories, you got to get some real food in there, and that's when you work with someone. It's like, okay, well, I have taste changes. My mouth is like on fire. I'm nauseated. And all I can get down is, insert name of whatever the food is. That's when you find a resource to work with somebody who can help you not only manage those side effects, but also find options.
Yeah. Well, and you know how the saying is there's an app for that, for everything, there's an app for that. Well, hopefully over time, we accumulate enough episodes when it comes to survivor and side effects and such that hopefully people use us as a resource as well, because we have episodes on mouth sores and on GI side effects and on constipation and on all sorts of things that go on.
Nausea and vomiting.
We have so many episodes. The idea here is to create a back library of information that is useful, not just now while we're doing it. We're definitely not, driven by the headline news of the day. We're about how do you help people through this, whether it's happening today, next week, or next year. So I want to say that I hope we become one of those resources people can use as they find someone nearby.
So that brings us to our next pod, which is the Survivorship pod. And we covered chemo brain, bone health, and oh my God, what was this last one? I just looked it up. Bone health, chemo brain, and fatigue. That's what we covered.
All right.
Those lingering side effects.
Yeah.
And these are pretty interchangeable with the side effects episodes, as I mentioned, because fatigue starts happening while you're in treatment. These aren't like exclusively to this is what happens afterwards. I mean, these are things that commonly persist. There are a lot of other subjects that we can delve into in the future, like about intimacy and sexual issues that that happen both during treatment as well as, beyond. So yeah.
Sorry, I got distracted.
What are you watching?
I wasn't. It's our podcast.
Oh.
I was bringing up the old episodes.
So, well, okay, I'm gonna go off. I'm gonna go off script because we're scripted here. What happened to the moment of woo?
What did happen to the moment of woo?
I don't know. We got to bring back the moment of woo in 2023. I'm writing this down because that was such a fun thing to do, where for several episodes, at least, we would kind of delve into maybe a commonly believed myth or, just something that was out there.
Yeah.
And we'd look in to see if there was science behind it. And what is this alleged woo? Is it legit?
Just because it's woo doesn't mean it's not true.
Just because it's woo doesn't mean it's not true. I'm a poet. Yeah. Okay. So, moment of woo. We're bringing that back.
All right. I think the moment of woo, we never formally stopped it. It just kind of faded.
It did fade. It faded.
No good reason.
No, but it's coming back. I know y'all are just wanting it to come back, so we're going to bring it back. The next few pods, whatever, we did a couple of pods on at the movies, and these actually were some of my favorite to do. They weren't really that popular, but I think they're really fun because I am this I was watching a holiday film because I love holiday films because they're so cheesy. And I'm talking to the TV and critiquing it and stuff. I love doing stuff like that. I love watching movies and then talking to someone about the movie. So I thought that these were really fun episodes. But apparently listeners weren't really all that into it.
They weren't into it. And it could just be a branding issue where people expected one thing, got another, and they were just I don't really want to hear this. I want to hear information that's going to be useful in my day-to-day living.
It could be. I mean, or it could be I don't know, maybe I gave away too much information. I don't know. It would have been more fun if we could have done it live, real time, kind of as you and I, not live for people have to sit through 2.5 hours of a movie with us, but just you and I watching it and commenting. I think that would have probably been more appealing. So we should figure out if we could do something like that.
Okay. I'm game.
Because I watch Trixie Mattel and Katya are these drag queens, and they do that. They watch movies and they talk about them as the movies are playing and stuff. And it's so much fun, but they do it all in 20 minutes. So we just have to figure out the technology. I think it's a YouTube thing. I think we can do it.
Yeah. I don't think it's difficult.
No.
The question is whether people want to listen to it.
Well, I think if we were commenting in real time, I think because you hate when people talk during movies.
Well,
but if we could pause it,
yes,
and comment in it, or we pick out certain parts. We're going to revisit it. I'm going to
have to pre-watch it by myself. I'll tell you, because there's no way I'm going to watch a movie the first time and pause it and comment. That's not how I process.
Okay. Well,
I need the whole thing, and then I can go back.
So those might be the last at the movies, or we might figure out how to work it. But I really enjoyed them, so I'm going to keep watching movies and commenting during the movies. Okay. And from there, we moved on to the truth about. This is another Mythbusters thing, right?
Yeah.
Those were fun.
I got to tell you, what is it? Remember The Inconvenient Truth was that movie that came out, Al Gore did. That is such an interesting term, inconvenient truths, because I feel like it makes me included. It makes everyone uncomfortable to hear truths that are really not fun to hear. So the truth about antioxidants or the truth about whatever we're talking about, it's almost like this is a hard little path to walk because it'd be a lot easier if we oversimplified things and just told people what they want to hear because that's kind of fun. Oh, shoot. Just a sec.
Bum, 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 bum.
Anyways, so I think here on our podcast, we do not cater to a certain message or trying to be popular or trying to do anything. Sometimes the truths that we do say are fairly inconvenient. It's not fun to say alcohol's not good for you. I don't like it. You don't like it. It's just what the data brings out when you go through it. So I'm saying that because we may sometimes rub people the wrong way because we're not just rolling over with a party line of some kind. The truth about was all about that kind of thing. Like, how about antioxidants? What about these tough subjects? What do we do about them?
Right. What about keto? There's people out there who are just like keto for everyone, but what does the science show? So that was that. And, we also had repeated more of those supplement 101 episodes, which I think are really, really popular. And I'm only bringing it up because I've had several people ask can we do one on melatonin? So I think that's going to be in the new year. We're going to definitely do one about melatonin.
We did glutamine, curcumin, or turmeric, folate.
Oh, we did the basics too. We talked about the first one we did, the first Supplements 101 was about the basics. And that was, why do people take supplements in the first place? Why would we recommend them in the first place?
Right. And how we think about them and when you should institute them and when you should stay away from them. So I feel like the Supplement 101, the basics, is actually really helpful for people to use a concept and a framework so that they can then go on to make these decisions for themselves. So again, it's another one of those, teach them how to fish episodes where we're not handing you exactly what you should do. And we don't pretend to have the solution for everybody, but we will tell you how to get there.
Yeah. So we continued that with other supplements that are escaping me at the moment. But yes, melatonin, for all of you out there who've been asking, that is definitely on our list for the new year. And I think this just came to me. I don't know why we didn't do this. We should do a truth about sugar.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Sure.
Don't you think? I mean, it's like the number one question that people ask.
Mm-hmm. Does sugar feed cancer?
Yeah. So I think that's going to be on our list. 2023. You heard it here first, folks.
Promises, promises. All right.
Promises. That's a song too.
It's a song. That reminds me that should also be a more in-depth conversation about what cancer cells use for fuel. So that I have visuals with that for folks. But I think that's another one that's like, okay, this is something everyone should know so that they understand it completely. Because it's not like you can never eat anything sweet again in your life and enjoy sweet treats. There is somewhere between never and always that makes a lot of sense.
All right. So we have been having a lot of people ask us if they could be on our podcast from the very beginning. And we kind of put that off. We're just like, we need to get our act together before we bring anyone else into this happy family. And then we did it. We had Dr. Amy Rothenberg.
Mm-hmm. Naturopathic physician.
Yeah. Sammy Peterson, who is a registered dietitian who is certified in oncology, and Dr. Mary Barnhart, who is a breast surgeon oncologist. Retired. Yes, retired. And those were kind of fun. I had never I'd never interviewed anyone before other than like for my school yearbook back in the day when I was in high school. So it was, it was a little intimidating for me, but it's fun. I'm kind of liking it.
Those are some of my favorite ones to do. I love interviewing folks because I like picking their brains. And I know like Dr. Rothenberg, she came out with a new book for survivorship and just kind of going through and getting people's expertise. And it's so nice to hear other perspectives. And especially when people like Sammy, so specialized in nutrition for oncology. And it's nice to pick their brains, right? And Dr. Barnhart is the same thing, just talking to someone who will give you an honest answer to the questions about what goes on in the OR exactly. We asked her some fun questions about what's happening inside that room. I enjoy it. I feel like it's such a nice learning experience for us at the same time as our audience.
And we chose those 3 guests because it was part of Who's in Your Pod. And so we wanted people who were part of an integrative care team. And we're going to continue with interviews in the new year. I'd like to interview more for like the next category, which was the #Cancer Insider. I'd like to interview more cancer people just to kind of get another perspective. I think we're really like breast cancer heavy in this podcast. And I'd like to bring in people with experience with other cancers so that we can hear more about things that might not be as celebrated with a month full of pink stuff or whatever. For the first part of those Cancer Insider, we talked about me because we were having a lot of scheduling issues. And it was like, wait, I'm here. Let's just talk about me and my story. And so I shared my story and I had some other stuff happening at the same time, which made for good drama. Bum, bum, bum.
I mean, in a kind of amazing, we didn't plan that kind of way. We were going to do your story, and then you had all the things happening in real time that had to do with being worked up for something suspicious. So that was just a strange coincidence.
Or as Bugs Bunny says, a coinkadink. Yeah. So, but then we had our podcast sisters on, Amy and Stef from Cancer for Breakfast.
That was fun.
Which I feel like I'm like part of I think everyone who listens to their show regularly feels like they're a part of their show, their podcast, because it involves a lot of talking back to the, like, it's a one-sided conversation, but it's like, oh, heck yeah, I felt that too. Or, commenting. Like, I get so into that podcast. So that was a delight. I get so excited when I see messages from them on Instagram. I feel like we're part of the cool kids now. Because as we pointed out in that episode, like, they welcomed us. Like, Stef, like found us and welcomed us to the podcast world. And it was really awesome because, I don't know, I felt seen.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a fun episode. I think that was one of our most popular in a single week. It had the most downloads in 1 week of any episode that we've ever done.
Oh, in that case, ladies, you're welcome back anytime. Because it's all about the ratings here. Okay. So rounding it out is our last pod that we talked about. It was kind of a way of me getting a movie in there because I didn't want to do a lot of work.
Truth comes out.
Because the movies they're already made. Someone did the work already. But this movie really brought up a lot of good questions. And so it was more about the questions that the movie brought up than the movie itself. But a lot of it was about the movie because it was just so many layers to it. And that's the cancer conflict. And it brings up a lot of different things, right? It brings up alternative cancer treatments, which we have talked about in several episodes about the difference between integrative and alternative cancer care. It brings up people being influenced by, I guess, cancer influencers. Somebody goes through treatment and they become experts, as we all are, in our own cancer experiences.
Right.
But, and then they start trying to sell it on other people. And so we talked about the concerns with that. And then also truly understanding what the goal of your treatment is.
I always say the most harm is done in that particular way, where people don't realize that the mechanism of their particular treatment is one thing and they're doing something else that undoes that somehow. So it doesn't matter if they're taking something that blocks folate and they're doing mega doses of folate on the other side. That's a bad idea. You can undo whatever that drug is doing to block folate. Or they're oxidizing the tumor and they're taking a bunch of antioxidants that would undo some of the oxidation. And when I say a bunch, I'm talking about whole foods, usually, like taking out the Vitamixer, putting kale and berries in there and drinking that while you're going through radiation. That's a bad idea. I'm not talking about regular food and consumption. I'm talking about jacking up your intake on purpose and the mechanisms behind that. And that's probably the biggest thing people do wrong, I think. Because remember, when I always say this, whenever you're looking at stats for any treatment that's conventional, I think of those stats as our worst case scenario. Our job is to make it better. So if you have a 50% response rate, how do I make sure I don't reduce it below 50? That's our worst case scenario, but we get it to 60 or 70. Like, that's my thought process. So in order to get there, you have to understand the mechanism of whatever the treatment already is in order to not get in its way first and then perhaps find ways of making it more effective.
So we're going to get a lot of questions about what you said about putting things in the Vitamix. I mean, there are a lot of people who do that, who will either juice or Vitamix. And in general, when people tell me that they're juicing, I restrict them to 4 to 6 ounces, not like some 32-ounce giant cup, for a number of reasons, because I want them to do more than just juicing. But I think that's going to be really controversial, what you just said.
Yeah, and I think that we have two opposing goals when people go through radiation treatment in particular. One, you want to feel well, but two, you want the radiation to work. And not necessarily in that order. One, you want the radiation to work. Two, you want to feel well. But you don't want to feel well at the cost of losing some of the effectiveness of the radiation. Radiation in particular, because there's only one way that it kills cells. Unlike chemo, there's various mechanisms for various drugs. When it comes to radiation, you could feel great. You did 6 weeks of radiation or 5 weeks or 7 weeks, whatever your course is. And to sail through it without any fatigue is not necessarily success to me. Yeah, you could juice your way and maybe you feel better, but at what cost?
So you believe that food can achieve a certain level of antioxidants that, because I think of supplements, right? And those super high dose of supplements, but you think that it's possible to achieve that through food as well?
Yes. I think when you concentrate them and you're taking them in a level that you're not going to ingest otherwise. Yes. In other words, you're not going to sit down and have 4 carrots, an apple, a couple blueberries, and a half a head of kale. You know what I mean? You're going to put that in the juicer. You could drink that down. No problem.
Right.
So you're getting supra physiological dosing. I think you start to, I think you start to experiment with yourself at that point. And people want to experiment. I'm saying the most logical thing to do is stay out of the way, particularly if it's a curative treatment, and only do things that are unlikely theoretically or proven not to get in the way.
But if people put blueberries in their yogurt,
yeah, food quantities isn't going to get in the way.
it's just like, because it's usually more than 4 carrots. It's usually people, like when you see people like blending carrots, it's like, that's a lot of carrots.
Oh yeah, like in a juicer?
Yeah.
No, I think you have to be very, very careful. I mean, if you want to do that, I know you're getting like radiation 5 days a week and you want to do that every Friday night to be safe, maybe do that. If these are compromises I come up with some of my patients, like, okay, if you're convinced that that's really necessary, what if you just did it once after treatment on a Friday or Saturday morning when you get up and then just call it good?
And limit the size of it.
Yeah. And so other people will be like, well, how about the Gerson diet? Well, these cases of Gerson, Gerson diet is juicing every 2 hours. It's an incredibly intense juicing regime, but there's other qualities to that diet. And there is a point with all polyphenols where it's no longer an antioxidant and it oxidizes. Does that mean you have to juice, 30 pounds of carrots every few days? Maybe. I mean, that's a whole nother kind of flip the coin over. You're juicing. It's pretty much all you're doing all day.
And I thought part of the Gerson diet was to not be going through conventional treatment at the same time.
You're right. Yeah. Gerson is a standalone, and it's unfortunately nearly impossible to follow because juicing every 2 hours is not exactly a way to live.
And I think when people always reference the Gerson diet, they're like, oh, and I'm juicing, but then they talk about other things that they're eating. So I've never met anyone who's actually done the actual Gerson diet. I have colleagues like yourself, and I have other colleagues who have met people who have done it. But because of the fact that to do a true Gerson diet, you can't come to a cancer center and get your conventional treatment. So that's probably why I haven't seen anyone do it.
Right. But you haven't seen anyone post, because even when I was at CTCA back when I was a resident, we had someone, I remember a patient very well. She did the Gerson diet for, I think it was 18 or 19 months exclusively. And then she came to CTCA after having done that because it didn't control it. So she was looking to integrate at that point some integrative therapies.
So did she went to the clinics, like one of the clinics where they do it?
I think so. Yeah. I don't remember. It's too long ago now.
Well, you know what? We need to talk about the truth about the Gerson diet then, maybe. Because we just spent quite a bit of time talking about that. I'm just saying, let's just make these are ideas. I'm just writing them down. Look, I have my notebook. This was like part of my New Year's resolution too. So Gerson diet.
In true Leah style, your New Year's resolution is being instituted on December 19th before New Year.
Yeah. And I always, as New Year's approach, I always say I don't have one. So this is the first time I'm making one in a long time.
But I'm saying you're on it. You're on top of it. You're already doing it.
I'm on top of it. And then
because
I'm going to forget about it.
19th of December. You don't need to do this until January 1st. You realize that, right?
I know. But when are we going to release this? We got to edit it and,
Yeah.
We had a lot of editing to do. We talked about a lot of stuff in this episode.
Hey, I want to share more numbers because I can. Our podcast was among the most top 25% shared on Spotify.
That's awesome. And because you just said that, I'm going to encourage people to please share our episodes because that's how we grow and that's how more people get this information. So I got to practice for when we're on YouTube. If you like this, hit the bell or push that button up there, whatever it is. Share, rate, leave a review.
We've been played 12.3 thousand times on Apple. That's pretty good. Some people listen twice. That's good. We'll take it.
Oh,
all right. I'll stop with my numbers now.
No, it's good. No, it's been awesome. This has been fun. Sometimes it's a lot of hard work and stress for me. And, but yeah, this was started to, like you said, get the news out there, get the information out there and help people, help people help themselves.
Yes. What's our saying? If it's teach them how to fish, what is our teach them how to
fish? I don't know.
No, come on. We've got to be more fitting. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Oh, you know what? Buy me a coffee. If you want to buy us a coffee.
Yes. If you like our show and you like what we're doing and you think we're of any value to you, please feel free to buy us a coffee. And if we take some of these numbers we see in our analytics and a few people buy us a cup of coffee, we could actually get some more interviews done perhaps and get an assistant to help us set the stuff up. Because it's the two of us in our shoestring budget. I guess if 2 people count as a skeleton crew, that's what we are.
But we do appreciate all of our listeners. I love getting the messages. I know I can't really answer things to the fullest extent of how I think people want answers to be answered. But I mean, I try. I try to give, as much information as I can without, being your doctor, because I'm not your doctor. But I love it. I love all of the feedback that we get through email as well as through social media. It's this has been really fun. And I look forward to the next 50. So on that note, I'm Dr. Leah Sherman.
And I'm Dr. Tina Kaiser.
And this is the Cancer Pod.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Cancer Pod. Remember to subscribe, review, and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media for updates. And as always, this is not medical advice. These are our opinions. Talk to your doctor before changing anything related to your treatment plan. The Cancer Pod is hosted by me, Dr. Leah Sherman, and by Dr. Tina Kaiser. Music is by Kevin MacLeod. See you next time.
What?
I have started over because now we're recording.
Oh, okay.
Friday night it was late, I was walking you home. We got down to